Welcome, geeks and nerds, girls and boys, to a brand new edition of Geek to Me Radio. Today we've got writer David Pepose on talking about the Savage Avengers, sold out. Second printing coming soon, I'm sure. We'll talk about some of his other projects as well. We'll also have Larry Quiggins of Bugs Comics on to review Doctor Strange 2. All that and more. Stand by.
We're talking TV, comics and movies, and video games. And if you don't know Star Trek from Star Wars, we'll try to explain. There are 12 doctors for Hogwarts houses, one ring rules them all. To be the greatest Pokemon master, you must catch them all. You must catch them all. Try to catch them all. Gotta catch them all. Gotta catch them all.
And if you're driving around the greater St. Louis area tonight listening to us on the Big 550 KTRS celebrating 25 years in broadcasting, hello to you and thank you for tuning in. If you're streaming us on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, or Instagram, hello and thanks very much for watching there. And of course, if you're hearing us after the fact in the podcast form, wherever platform you might be getting your podcast from, we appreciate you listening in each week. Hopefully you're enjoying what we're doing, and hopefully you've already left us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform that is. It always helps us out, and we appreciate that very much. We have a full show tonight. We're going to dive right in. My first guest, he's joined us before, not on this radio station. He was on the last one, and I think we did a podcast talking about some of his other projects, but now he is writing the brand new Savage Avengers out. You can go get it at your local comic book stores if you're able to find one. David Pepose, how are you?
Hi, I'm doing great. Thank you guys so much for having me.
It's great to have you back again. I think that I backed your Kickstarter, and we never got a chance to talk about the Kickstarter you for the OZ, which was brilliant. You're very pleased, I guess, because there's another one of that. Did it finish the second Kickstarter?
Yeah, we wrapped up on that. We're actually about to send the final files to the printer, so we'll be having physical copies in everyone's hands. But yeah, digital copies went out a few weeks back, and people seem to really like our second installment for the book, and I'm very excited to do a third Kickstarter, hopefully later this year.
So now that with the Marvel, we talked a little bit before we came on air about the deadlines you've been dealing with, because you haven't even had a chance to watch Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. Because I know Kickstarters, we've talked to a lot of independent creators. We've talked to you before about some of the ones you've done. Kickstarters are a full-time job. With doing another Kickstarter and the Marvel deadlines, are we cutting out sleeping or eating? What were you getting rid of?
Yeah, thankfully I've been able to kind of pace it out in such a way that I did my Kickstarter kind of when my deadlines were not super intense over at Marvel, and then vice versa. Sort of my Kickstarter was over as my Marvel deadlines were kicking up. The advantage that I've had, at least as far as my Kickstarters have been concerned, is that I've done the hard part already. I usually have an entire book fully written before I do a Kickstarter. So at that point, really the only thing that's left is just, the art side of things. And I do take some time to give notes, of course, to my collaborators and just sort of, act as the traffic cop. But thankfully, kind of the really hard time intensive stuff, the script writing is long done. So yeah, I keep busy. This is certainly, it's a full-time job for me at this point. And, it's very fun. It sure beats digging ditches. And anytime that I feel particularly wiped, I just have to tell myself, I'm living the dream. And I really am. I've been working on some really cool projects, both at Marvel and outside of it. And I kind of feel like I've really kind of stepped up to the next level. And I'm so grateful and so excited for these kinds of opportunities.
And for people who may not know, because I mentioned the OZ, the concept is basically it's like an alternate world in the set in the Oz, if you know the Frank L. Baum stuff. So tell people a little bit about what the OZ is.
Yeah, the OZ. I've described it as what if the Hurt Locker took place in the Wizard of Oz. Uh, it's Dorothy Gale's granddaughter is an Iraq war veteran who finds herself stranded in the war-torn land of Oz, and she finds out that Grandma killing two wicked witches in a week and then splitting, that's not really a happy ending. That's just a power vacuum, not unlike the one that she just survived in Baghdad. And so she'll have to navigate her grandmother's former friends if she hopes to ever bring peace to what the locals call the occupied zone, or as it's colloquially known as the OZ. So yeah, it's that book I think is one of the best things I've ever worked on. I'm working with artist Ruben Rojas, colorist Whitney Kogar, letterer DC Hopkins, and just a murderer's row of cover artists. And I'm really proud of that book. We actually won a Ringo Award for it in October for the first issue for best single issue or storyline
Wow.
of I guess that would be 2020. And yeah, as it being a self-published book and something that we financed entirely on Kickstarter, it really means the world to me that both readers and the Ringo Awards Committee saw something in our book. It's been a leap of faith, really since the jump, and I'm so proud of my team and my collaborators on this. And we're very excited for people to see what else we have planned for this series and maybe beyond.
And I know last time we talked to you, I said I'm a sucker for the variant covers, so I had to get the entire set of all the variants for the first issue. But I mean, just the art, like you said, the art is really, really gorgeous on all those books. It's just it's such a fun because everyone loves the Wizard of Oz, and I've still got my VHS copy of Return to Oz with TikTok and everything like that. So it's very cool to see you put this entirely new spin on all these things. It's if you haven't seen it yet, it's if they only backed it on Kickstarter, is there a way? Is it going to be released in some kind of trade if people who missed out can get it?
Yeah, our goal is eventually to have a collected version, but we will have catch-up tiers in our next Kickstarter, the third one that's coming out later this year. I will have this available on my website as soon as the second issue, as soon as our print copies arrive. So you'll be able to buy it through there. We'll probably have a backer kit storefront as well, so you'll be able to get things there. So yeah, we'll have lots of opportunities to get the book. And yeah, just keep an eye out on more Kickstarters because we will always have catch-up tiers for anybody who has missed out on any of our previous issues.
Perfect. And the Savage Avengers, for those of you who don't know, if you're able to watch, I've got the first issue right here, if I can get without a glare on there. But there's all these gorgeous variant covers. John Romita Jr. did a variant cover. So kind of walking through it, how did you get attached? Were you pitching an idea? Did they say, "Hey, we like his stuff. Let's go see if he wants to write this"? How did the marriage come about?
It was very much the latter approach. I've been in contact with Marvel for a while since my first book, Spencer and Locke, came out in 2017, and so I had been emailing people like Tom Brevoort, my editor on Savage Avengers, CB Cebulski, who's the editor in chief at Marvel. Basically anybody, any editor or talent relations person at Marvel, I've probably reached out to at least once since I became a published comics creator. And Tom really, I can't say enough great things about working with Tom Brevoort. And he was kind of the first editor to ever respond. And so we got to talking over the years. And every time I'd come out with a new series or a new anthology story or just anything new, I would make it a point to send it to Tom and just say, here's what I've been working on. And last year, my series at Aftershock, Scouts Honor, came out. And I think both Tom and CB really enjoyed that series. And so yeah, it was last June, Tom reached out to me and said, hey, we have a project. I don't know if you'd be interested in it, but would you want to hear more? And so I, of course, at the time was thinking, they're going to offer me maybe like an anthology story or a one shot or maybe a mini. I was definitely not prepared to get an email saying, hey, we're going to be relaunching Savage Avengers, and would you happen to have any ideas for it? And I had that brief moment of like pure abject terror.
I'll bet.
But I kept thinking to myself, why me? Why me? And for those who aren't familiar with Savage Avengers as a concept, Marvel 5 years ago, I believe, started a licensing agreement with Conan Properties, so they could make comics based on Conan the Barbarian. And one of their ideas was to put Conan the Barbarian side by side with the heroes of the Marvel Universe, and that's Savage Avengers. And so I thought about why me, and I realized that's Marvel's mashup book, and I'm the guy who loves doing mashups. And so once that kind of clicked for me, I realized there was a lot that could be done, both with Conan, both with Savage Avengers as a concept. Where could we go from here, both with and potentially without Conan? And so that was really exciting for me. And Yeah, so I immediately emailed Tom back. I think I emailed him a pitch idea in about 45 minutes, and I said, this is just kind of the knee-jerk first blush idea, but what do you think? And that actually wound up being kind of the core of our first arc for this series. So yeah, I'm kind of pinching myself, and it's been a wonderful experience working with artist Carlos Magno on the book. He is just fantastic. He just turned in a whole bunch of pages today. He draws ridiculously, frighteningly fast, and he's very talented and very gracious to boot. So yeah, I love this book, and I'm so thrilled to be able to not just write an icon like Conan the Barbarian, but to really kind of come up with my own brand new Avengers team and sort of put them through their paces in this ongoing series.
And it's interesting too, because one of the characters, there was this mini series, the Weapon H mini series, which I loved. I got it and I read it. I'm like, this is such a cool concept. I like the idea. It's a new character and everything like that. With the team, did they say we want a Savage Avengers and you pitch the team, or did they say it's got to have Daredevil? It's got to have, how did the team form?
They gave me a ton of latitude for this book. Really, when I had first messaged Tom and he had asked me for ideas, the first idea I said was, I would love to do something that was in the vein of Conan versus the Terminator, which is why we have Conan the Barbarian fighting against this cyborg from the future called Deathlok. He's sort of a police officer for the time stream, and Conan is not meant to be in our present. He has committed crimes against the time stream, and Deathlok is prepared to erase those crimes. But the second thing I said to Tom was, I would love to have like an actual roster. The first volume of Savage Avengers, which was masterfully written by Gerry Duggan, it started off with kind of a loose roster. It had Wolverine, Elektra, Punisher, Venom, and Dr. Voodoo. And that was for the first arc. And then it kind of morphed into a sort of a Conan team-up book. There'd be a couple parts with Conan teaming up with Deadpool. There was a one issue where it was Conan versus Spider-Man. At one point, Emma Frost from the X-Men show up. It was sort of Conan bouncing around between all these different characters. And I said, I'd love to have a permanent roster for this book. And so I had kind of a wish list for Tom and company. And I said, these are characters that I all feel would fit the quote unquote Savage mandate, that would like organically fit in a book like this. And then I thought I kind of cross-referenced it by, here's certain roles that I need characters to fill. Like I need somebody who's going to be kind of like the big bruiser type, it's kind of the pure brute force guy. I need somebody who's a tech guy, who can kind of think his way out of problems. I would love to have sort of the team tactician, who's kind of like the agile stealth fighter. Those were sorts of the archetypes that I was playing with. And yeah, I mean, honestly, I got almost all of my first round picks.
Wow.
Deathlok, obviously, that was the linchpin to the story. Cloak and Dagger, I've been a huge fan of Cloak and Dagger for a long time. I felt that they've deserved to be Avengers for at least 15 years. So I'm pleased to finally be the guy who gets to bring them up to that A-list status. Elektra as the all-new Daredevil, I was really hopeful that we could get her and keep her in the Daredevil uniform.
Yeah.
So that was very exciting. Flash Thompson returning as Anti-Venom. He just returned from the dead in Donny Cates' King in Black series. And then, Weapon H, who he's kind of a fun wild card, and you'll get to kind of see why in our second issue. Well, we've got some very fun plans in store for Clay Cortez that, for those who don't know who he is, he's half Hulk and half Wolverine. But I always think of him as half Jason Bourne and half Roy Kent from Ted Lasso, where he's just...
I hadn't thought about that. Like, I can see that though.
He's this very well-trained spy, like military guy who has no interest in superhero stuff and does not want to be here whatsoever. And so that's why I keep throwing him into the same scenes with Dane Whitman as the Black Knight, who is probably the most earnest Avenger because he's wearing a suit of armor all
Right.
day, every day. And so, yeah, it's kind of got a Caps kooky quartet kind of vibe to it.
Yeah, it's a good way to put it.
And there's a lot of history for that sort of thing, ranging from the Caps kooky quartet to the Defenders to Al Ewing's Mighty Avengers, which was a really seminal, influential work on this book for me. Rick Remender's Uncanny X-Force or his Uncanny Avengers. Those are all teams that maybe don't make a ton of sense at first blush on paper. But the thing that I love about the Savage Avengers is they really do have kind of a core common thread, which is they're all characters that have really grappled with their dark sides at some point, and oftentimes that has sort of brought them up to the line of whether or not they decide they want to kill. And I think there are a lot of characters that don't understand that. They might be a little more clean cut, and I think you kind of have to know it to understand it. And so these characters are going to be the ones that really kind of pull each other through the hard times. And we're throwing them into some pretty uncharted territory for this adventure. And they're going to have to really rely on each other to survive. And so you're going to see some very interesting dynamics start to form, starting in the first issue, but then kind of growing and evolving and metamorphosizing, as our story unfolds. But the team really clicks together in a really fun way. And I can't wait for readers to get to see what we have in store for them.
I think people always like that kind of, especially with the setting, like this team has not, they're aware of each other, but they've never, Weapon H has never worked with Anti-Venom. So it's kind of the little bit of that fish out of water / Island of Misfit Toys kind of team, which is what I think made Hellions work so well. Hellions was one of my favorite Marvel books because it was just such a, they didn't play nicely even with each other, but they had to get along. So I think that's one of the reasons I'm looking forward, because this is such a ragtag bunch, and Black Knight is one of my top 5 favorite Avengers. So I'm looking forward to seeing how this plays out, especially now they're all thrown into this new world.
I wanted to speak a little to Gerry's original roster, and that's how we have Elektra returning from the original roster. We have Anti-Venom kind of filling in for that Venom role. We have Weapon H filling in for that Wolverine role, but also kind of injecting a little Hulk into the mix, which was kind of the one Savage hero that never made it into Gerry's run.
Yeah.
And then meanwhile, I wanted to add a little bit more of a sword and sorcery bent, which is why Black Knight and Cloak and Dagger, both their visuals, but also their core power concepts felt very sword and sorcery. It felt like something you could see in D&D. And so those characters all really spoke to the Conan vibe of it all. And so, there's a fun alchemy to it. I mean, it was certainly a challenge to get all those people in the room at the same time, in the same way, in a way that I felt was organic. You're introducing 7 heroes and a villain, which is, that's a Justice League comic,
right?
Without the benefit of necessarily the household names that the Justice League, possesses. But I think if readers give us a shot and they come to it with an open mind, my very first comic was Infinity War #2, where that's just a whole room of superheroes.
No kidding.
No context. And I built a career out of that. So I think there's a lot to love about these characters. And the more you stick around and the more you get to know them, I think you're going to fall in love with them just as much as I have.
And you mentioned they're not household names, but some hardcore comic book fans came out, because I know you tweeted out the other day, first print has already sold out. So congratulations on that.
Thank you. I'm still pretty gobsmacked by it all. I found out on Friday. I got confirmation about that from my editors, and I couldn't thank the readership and the retailers and press enough for really coming out in force for this book. I feel like we're a little bit of a dark horse book. I just like the characters aren't household names. I'm not a household name. Carlos isn't a household name, and so it's sort of an untested group of heroes with some up and coming creators. And I really appreciate all the people who came out for something new. You hear all the time of, where are the new ideas?
Right.
And
yeah,
I'd like to think that that's what we're serving up. And I think people are really responding to it, it is very exciting because this is the quiet issue. This was the setup issue. Now that is all done, we really get to put pedal to the metal in an even more exciting and focused way.
Very cool. And you're okay to stick with us for a little while longer, yes?
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah. If you're listening right now, we are going to take a quick break. We are talking with David Pepose discussing the Savage Avengers. If you have a question or a comment, you can send it to us on the KTRS text lines 84126. Just put your name, John from Belleville, or whoever you might be, where you're from, so we can give you a shout out, and we'll see your text line come across. We will give David that question or comment, and we'll go from there. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to come right back and continue our talk with David Pepose about Savage Avengers, and we'll have Larry Quiggins from Bugs Comics on as well. Please stand by.
Spangler, this lab is spooky. Vankerman, nip ahead. It's full speed ahead. What an eyeful. Let's split. Great car. Yikes, it's Highway Hunter.
The real Ghostbusters, each sold separately.
Ghostbusters! Careful, Janine, this airport's haunted. Wow, great plane. It's air sickness. Run for it. Hey, mister, how about a lift? This wicked ride.
The real Ghostbusters, each sold separately.
The Legoland gas station. You build it for action. You can raise a car up on the lift and check the underside, or fill her up, close the hood, and pretend to take a ride. What can you do with the Public Works Center? You can build a crane and watch it drop some bricks into a bin, or lift the door, roll out the truck, and let the bricks fall in.
The action's up to you.
The Legoland Public Works Center from the Legoland Town Collection. Legoland gas station sold separately from Lego Systems.
Puppy, you're my one and only puppy love.
You can show your Pound Puppy how much you love him with snuggly Pound Puppy outfits.
If you're hooded on t-shirts, we're going biking. Snap your pop's jazzy jacket.
Pound Puppies and outfits, each sold separately.
Whoa! Now let's walk to the park. Uh-oh, thunder. Put on your dry doggy rain gear, and you'll stay dry as a bone.
Hooded Hound t-shirt, Dry Doggy Rain Gear, Pup's Jazzy Jacket, and Pound Puppies all sold separately. From Tom...
Black Steel Robo Force!
Hunter the Conqueror is about to attack Max Steel the Leader. Wrecker the Demolisher to the rescue.
Ideal's new Robo-Force. Warrior robots with gripper bases and crusher arms, each sold separately.
Hundred's escaping.
Okay in there?
Okay, Dad. But we won't be safe till we're rid of Hundred.
Hundred the Conqueror, Max Steel the Leader, Wrecker the Demolisher, each sold separately. New from Ideal's Robo-Force.
Long ago at Rose Petal Place, Orchid met Nastina, the evil spider. Dolls sold separately.
Oh, no, Orchid, it's Nastina. Wait till I tiptoe through your tulips, Rose Petal. Watch out, Nastina. The sky is falling. I won't fall for that. Gotcha. That'll keep her in her place.
Rose Petal, Nastina, and Orchid dolls come with all you see here, each sold.
OOMA.com to learn more. UMA, smart communications for the smarter business.
Hey, this is Yuri Lowenthal, but you may know me recently as Peter Parker / Spider-Man, and you're listening to Geek to Me Radio.
Welcome back to Geek to Me Radio. I'm your host, James Enstall. Geek to Me Radio heard every Sunday here on the Big 550 KTRS. And if you've been listening for a while now, you know our official movie sponsor is Marcus Theaters. MarcusTheaters.com is the website. You can go to their website to find the location of the Marcus Theaters or movie tavern closest to you. Maybe you're like David and you have not yet seen Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. You can get your tickets and go see it now. 3 weeks in a row at the #1 spot at the box office. So congratulations to all of them and their mystic box office defying odds to pull that off. A lot of great movies out right now, too. If you want to get out and see a movie, maybe it was raining like it was here this weekend, or maybe it's going to be too hot in the summer, you want to go inside and cool off. In my opinion, it's never a bad time to see a movie. But if you're going to do it in the best possible surroundings, and that's Marcus Theaters and Movie Tavern. And if you go there right now, you can even rent a private cinema, which you can get for a graduation. Maybe you've got a birthday coming up, so you rent the private cinema. I think it starts at $99 depending on your area, and you and 20 of your friends can watch a movie. You can go watch Doctor Strange all by yourself. You can add concessions on and other stuff like that. But it's always a good time to see a movie. And if you also download the Marcus Theaters app, you can see it right there in the corner of my phone right there. If you're out and about, you hit the app, it'll tell you what location you're closest to. You can buy your tickets and order your concessions right through the app, too. It's genius. Check them out. MarcusTheaters.com is the website for the best movie-going experience in the galaxy. We have David Pepose. We've been talking about the Savage Avengers, now sold out. We've got our comic book sponsor, Larry Quiggins. You've heard him on the show before. We've reviewed Batman together, and Larry is on there. Larry, do I have you locked in?
Yes, you do.
Perfect. Say hello to David, Larry.
Hey, David, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Larry. Good to have you on.
And Larry, you said you had a question about Savage Avengers for David, yes?
Oh, well, yeah, I do. It's kind of Conan related. Now you did mention that 5 years ago Marvel picked up the license again. Now, is there any truth to what is being said online that the license is lapsing and Conan's going to leave Marvel again?
Yeah. No, to answer that, yes. The licensing agreement is going to be wrapping up, but rest assured that hasn't altered my plans for the book whatsoever. We've been working. I've known about this since last year, so very early on in the development process with this book, and so I built a good chunk of runway about Conan and his eventual send off. But that's the great thing about doing an Avengers book is that it never really rests on the shoulders of any particular one character, and the roster is always able to kind of evolve and grow. So rest assured, this is not news to me. We've been very prepared for all of this. I'm working on the second arc right now, actually, and we've got some really fun stuff planned. So stay tuned. But like I said, this is an ongoing series. We are not going anywhere. And I'm very excited for readers to see all the fun stuff that Carlos and I have planned for you.
Well, that sounds cool. I'm glad to hear that because as a retailer, of course, I've already been asked if it was going to be a limited series. And I was under the impression that it was going to be an ongoing series. And I totally agree with you.
We're full ongoing, baby.
Need one character to have a book like this happen. And I want to tell you, for what it's worth, as a 55-year-long reader of Marvel books since basically the beginning, I really, really loved the book. And I don't know why when I saw that just the initial concept and the team and some of the characters on the team aren't necessarily some of my favorite characters per se.
Sure.
But I'm kind of like James. I like off-the-wall team-ups and mash-up groupings and things like that and like to see how different characters work. So I guess I do have one question, and whether or not if you want to answer. Is there you gonna touch on any of the Luther Manning past with Deathlok?
Not anything overtly in the text, although for me, Michael Collins is really that's my Deathlok, the 90s Deathlok.
Gotcha.
That's what I grew up with. I came of age in the 90s, so like maximum carnage is in my DNA. Which is why I have Deathlok and Cloak and Dagger in this book. This Deathlok, he is a member of the Deathlok Army from Jason Aaron's flagship Avengers title and the spin-off series Avengers Forever. Basically, for those who haven't been keeping up with Deathlok, as a character, he's half zombie, half cyborg, which is very, very cool. But since then, Marvel has kind of mutated the concept with time travel in the mix. And so the Deathloks are kind of a multiversal police corps who are making sure that like bad guys aren't screwing up the time stream, aren't manipulating multiple universes. And so while there have been a number of Deathloks who have been assisting the Avengers in that regard, we've got another member of the Deathlok army who has said Conan is not meant to be here. It is a crime against the time stream that he is here, and we need to take care of that immediately. And this is a fun Deathlok. He's an all-new character. We will be delving into his backstory and his motivations as the series unfolds. We've got some really fun stuff planned. I will say you're not going to want to miss issues 3 and 4, which are still up for pre-orders at your local comic shop. I can tell you that the end of issue 3 is going to really change a lot of stuff for our book, and I think a really good way. And I think issue 4 will really kind of delve into what we have in mind. So yeah, stay tuned. But I love Deathlok. I think he's such an interesting character. It's such an interesting concept. There's so much flexibility, both with the time travel element and the fact that it's a cyborg stapled onto a zombie. So there's all sorts of things you can do with that character, and I think we've got some really cool stuff planned for our Deathlok.
With these particular characters that you've got on the roster, I guess, because obviously there's been a lot of changes, like people who haven't maybe kept up with all the Marvel things. I was like, why is Elektra Daredevil? Wasn't Flash Thompson dead? Who's Weapon H? And then also like the Black Knight, the stuff that's been going on with him lately in the couple of miniseries we got. Was that stuff that you personally had kept up with, and that's why you wanted them on the team? Or did you have to do a little back digging to see, okay, where are we at with this character right now?
It depends. Some of the characters I was more up to speed on than others. Like I had been following Chip Zdarsky and Marco Cicchetto's Daredevil, so I knew kind of what was going on with Elektra at that point, and I knew that Flash Thompson had come back, and I remembered his death in Dan Slott's Amazing Spider-Man. So like I the only thing I really had to catch up with was just sort of his immediate post resurrection adventures. Black Knight, I had to do a little bit of quick reading, just because when I had pitched this story, his last miniseries had only just started. So for example, I didn't actually know anything about Jax Chopra, his long lost daughter, because by the time that revelation had come out in the comics, I was already in the middle of writing, I think, the second issue of this, or the first or second issue of this book. So all I had known was there was going to be a second Black Knight that would be sharing the Ebony Blade with him. That's really all I knew. So I caught up on that mini series just to make sure I was really up to speed on the final draft of the first issue. Cloak and Dagger, I caught up on their most recent mini series. Although I think that's the beauty of some of these characters, is that you don't necessarily need to get really into the deep nitty gritty of the continuity. They're very archetypical characters. And so you're able to kind of figure out like, well, what just feels true to them as a concept? And you sort of, the continuity can be a double-edged sword. You sort of say, you acknowledge things when you have to, and sometimes you just are like, is that something that needs mentioning in this particular moment, in this particular script? And but we do touch upon a lot of stuff. We touch upon Elektra's history. We touch upon her recent vow against killing. That'll appear fairly prominently in the next issue. Flash Thompson coming back from the dead. We're going to address that a bit in issue 3. We mentioned Black Knight and his relationship with his daughter in the first issue, and even Cloak and Dagger's, their recent love interests that we just wrote out. We gave that a little acknowledgement in the first issue that's not a thing anymore. So yeah, the thing for me is like I said, one of my very first comics was Infinity War #2, where that was literally just a room full of superheroes, and I knew nothing about any of them. I was just like, those guys look cool, and like you can quickly kind of pick up like, oh, Hawkeye. I didn't know anything about Hawkeye, but I knew that's a guy who fires bows and arrows. I was like, I know Spider-Man, I know that guy, and Iron Man, I don't know who he is, but he's a red and yellow dude who fires beams, and he's in armor. And I think that's the fun thing about superhero comics that I think often gets a bad rap. I think sometimes readers, they say, well, why don't you hold my hand? Why don't you spoon feed me through this? And my response is, you don't need to be. You can just kind of read what's on the page, take it at face value, and fall in love with the characters. I think that's a really organic way to do it. And I think now that we're sort of living in the world where like everything's hyper serialized and everything's online, I think there's this expectation of, well, should we spoon feed you through all this? And my reaction is, if I had 40 pages, I could do that.
Right.
But then people would say I've overwritten it. And so it's a tricky balance that you really have to get into. But I feel like these characters, part of the reason they appealed to me so much was because they felt like, not blank slates, but they felt like there was so much untapped potential to them. And so we were really kind of able to blaze a trail that is about looking forward rather than looking back. And that, I think, is going to make this book, I hope, very user-friendly for brand new readers, because the continuity ultimately doesn't matter.
Yeah, that's actually kind of a nice thing when you can kind of go into a book with a nice clean slate like that as a reader. I mean, that's great to have that. And then you get to know all these characters along the way, because this is your spin on these characters too. It might be a different take than what we're used to seeing Zardsky do in his book with Daredevil and everything like that. So yeah, that's a nice path for you to be on, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
And again, if you're wanting to keep up with with anything David does, the Kickstarters he's got going for the next chapter of the OZ, if you haven't yet read Spencer and Locke, I highly recommend going to your local comic book store and grabbing Spencer and Locke, because that's a lot of fun. But tell people where they can keep up with you online, things like that, if they want to follow you on social media and whatnot.
Yeah, absolutely. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at PeposeD. It's my last name, first initial, or David Pepose Comics on Facebook. You can also subscribe to my newsletter, Pep Talks, at bit.ly/pepnews, or visit my website at davidpepose.com.
And we'll put a link to davidpepose.com in our show notes. So if you're listening to this in the podcast form after the fact, go down to the bottom of the page, click the link, and it'll take you right to David's website. I would keep you on, but I don't want to spoil Doctor Strange 2 for you any more than it's already been spoiled.
I hope he survived. That's all I can hope for. But no, thank you guys so much for having me. Thank you for all of your support of my books. And yeah, for anybody who's interested in Sword and Sorcery Terminator, you would love Savage Avengers. Tell your local comic shop if they are out of copies to pre-order our second printing. Final order cutoff is on the 29th, so tell them to order that ASAP.
Perfect. And we can get issues 2 coming out in about a month. And there's the glorious issue number 1. If you're watching this, you can try to get it without the glare. And there's some great variant covers. I know Larry's got a variant cover in his case at the shop that I keep trying to smack my hands away from every time I go in. I'm telling Larry not to let me buy it. David, as always, it's a pleasure to have you on. Hopefully we can have you on for issue 25 when that rolls around.
Thank you very much. And have a great night, you guys.
You too. Thanks very much. Be well.
Thank you.
There he goes. We are going to keep Larry on, though, because Larry and I are going to be discussing Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, but we're going to take a really quick commercial break. First, you're listening to Geek to Me Radio on the Big 550 KTRS, St. Louis. Please stand by.
Cascade and Pelly. Other series Tropical sold separately.
Introducing the new Play-Doh Mop Top Hair Shop.
Well, they're the mop tops, the Play-Doh mop tops. Just turn the chair.
They grow Play-Doh hair.
They're the mop tops.
You can comb it, wave it, style it, or shave it.
The Play-Doh mop tops.
You can let it grow down to his toes.
They're the mop tops.
From the Play-Doh Mop Top
Hair Shop.
The Play-Doh Mop Top Hair Shop, sold with everything you see here. New from Kenner.
Here's Sit and Spin from Kenner.
You can spin around, sit around, even carry it around. Let's go inside. You can spin some more, like before, most anywhere you put it down.
Sit and Spin, the indoor-outdoor take-along spinning toy.
Wow! You can spin like 1, spin like 2. How you spin is up to you.
Sit and Spin, you put it together. From Kenner's Discovery Time.
I love nuzzling up to you, Wind Whistler. You're so soft. So soft, my little pony. My little pony is so soft to touch. I love the way you feel, my so soft pony.
Paradise.
So soft,
Shady. Wind Whistler. Ribbon. Lofty. Each sold separately.
You're so soft.
So soft, My Little Pony. Shady and other So Soft ponies sold separately. From Hasbro.
Supernatural! Now you can join the battle between brave Lionheart and evil Skull and their eerie ghostlings.
Lion, you're dying. Now, Master.
They change to fight with ghostly might. Turn them into the light and they change into even more powerful.
Featuring the roster of this World Championship Club. Great seats remain. Get your tickets at cardinals.com/promotions.
Hi, this is Mary McDonald-Lewis, and I was the voice of Lady J on G.I. Joe.
Hi, this is Bill Radner. I'm the voice of Flint on G.I. Joe, and listening to Geek to Me Radio
is half the battle.
G.I. Joe against Cobra, the enemy, fighting to save.
We're back. talking about a great place to go and spend some time would be, of course, the city of St. Charles. If you, it's been a little rainy lately, but if you're looking to get outdoors and it's be some nice weather and enjoy the spring here in St. Louis, you can go right across the river and visit historic St. Charles. You can bike ride the Katy Trail, go play in Frontier Park. There's always something to do and something to see. They've got some great historical landmarks if you just kind of want to go around and do that. A lot of, I noticed with the graduation photos, I noticed a lot of people out getting their pictures taken because there's all these great backdrops where people can get these great pictures. They're doing it on the train tracks right there, or up against some of these old historic buildings for a nice background. A lot of great places to eat. If you've got a graduation party, you might want to do something at Salt and Smoke. If you've got a birthday you want to celebrate, a lot of great places to go out there and eat. And, of course, if you want to buy your grad a special gift, a lot of little shops up and down historic Main Street that are these great small businesses with very unique shops where you won't get these things anywhere else. It's not like you can go to a big box store and get some of this stuff. A lot of it's handmade, locally sourced, and it's never been more important, especially in this economy, to support small businesses. So if you're wanting to get out, wanting to have some fun, wanting to do something different, wanting to get some great food, wanting to go shopping someplace new, check out the city of St. Charles. You can start by looking at the website, discoverstcharles.com. That's discoverstcharles.com. And, of course, if you're outside the greater St. Louis area, come and have a stay. Lots of places to resort, relax. I don't know how you'd say it, but a lot of great places from bed and breakfasts. You can stay at the casino if you want to do some high rolling and get some good food there as well. You can camp. There's lots of RV places as well. Start your trip at the website. Once again, discoverstcharles.com. Discoverstcharles.com. As we always say, it's an historically good time. We have Larry Quiggins of Bugs Comics and Games on the phone. Just celebrated his 6-month anniversary of the opening of Bugs Comics and Games on Free Comic Book Day, which was a madhouse. I've never seen so many people trying to grab comics out of my hand since I was giving them away for free one time. But Larry, how are you?
Doing good. How are you, bud?
Good, good. Just amazed how busy you were on Free Comic Book Day. You love to see it.
Yeah, it was great. And the cool thing is that a lot of those people that you were seeing were new in the medium. I mean, they can't say how many they out in that area had never heard of Free Comic Book Day.
Oh wow!
Then I thought it was very successful.
Good.
A lot of new people came in, and there's a lot of new people that are getting into reading the books, and that's really exciting to me.
When you look at your customer base, and Free Comic Book Day, I guess what kind of gave you a good snapshot of that, are you getting a lot of people who are my age and older who are kind of, a comic book store and kind of rediscovering the hobby, or was it mostly like younger kids who are new and say, hey, I see these on the big screen, I want to get into the comic books, where, what do I buy?
I'd say it's about 50-50.
Wow, okay.
I am getting a lot of, like you said, guys your age and even up to my age and even older than me, coming and going, wow, I used to read comics. I think I might start trying them again and looking at them again. And, of course, like you've mentioned before, when somebody comes into my store, if they tell me they like this character or they like this concept or genre or whatever, I try my best to find something that they want to read, to try.
Yeah.
Even if it's not the character, the type of genre, if they say, well, I just love sword and sorcery stuff, it's like, well, yeah, okay, you got the Conan stuff over here, but there's this stuff here that you might like, And today I had a little girl, 5, 6 years old, I'm guessing, and she wanted her first comic. They said that they'd seen the sign, blah, 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 and they came in for their first comic book, and of course, I still have some leftover stuff from Free Comic Book Day. So, of course, I gave her all the ones, free comic ones for the kids for all ages. And so funny. She pointed to Elektra. I like her, and me and her mom was kind of like, well, it was the Elektra black, white, and blood.
Yeah, maybe not so much for a 5-year-old.
It's like, oh yeah. We turned her on to a Spider-Man.
Something a little more kid-friendly than with
yeah.
That one's a little rough.
But I'm just amazed at how many kids I'm getting.
Good. That's good to see, because that way that's the future of the comic book industry right there, be it for the retail stores or for the actual comic book makers. That's the future.
Oh, yeah. That's what I tell the parents, too. And then the ones, I've got a lot of them, ones that are, it's kind of, it's heartwarming to see. I've got so many of them that are between that 11 to 15-year-old age. And God, I remember, of course, I'm still obsessed with comics today at 60, but when I was in that age range, 10 to 15, man, comics was just everything in my world. And to see that age and getting into it and being sucked in is really cool to see.
That's when you met me. I was riding my bike before I ever had my driver's license. I'd ride my bike from over by Hazelwood Central, where I lived, all the way down West Florissant, all the way down Newhall's Ferry to get to your shop. So that was about that time when I got hooked.
It's just a great age to discover the world of comics. It really is. To see just no matter what kind of stuff you like, there's something in comics that you can find.
And speaking of World of Comics, obviously the big screen is bringing us, it's opening up a whole new audience to people, because now, I used to have to read my comic books. I'd have my Justice League comics in my folder, and I'd try to read them in school because I didn't want to have anyone see that I was reading comic books. Now it's almost like if you don't read comic books, you have no idea what to talk about with people because all these movies.
You're not cool.
And Doctor Strange 2, obviously, we just mentioned it earlier, third consecutive week at #1 at the box office. I know you and I had talked about this, and also Joey V, my executive producer, who just celebrated his birthday on the 20th. Happy birthday, Joey.
Hey,
Happy
thank
birthday.
You. Oh, my God. Thank you, Larry, for coming in for this. This is special.
And we all have seen Doctor Strange. Larry, you have a much more deep knowledge. I know of Doctor Strange, but I started reading it in the 90s when he had his own solo book. Talk a little bit about what you, who have kind of experienced more of Doctor Strange, thought of the movie.
Well, first off, I will say that the movie goes along with what I just said about comics, about you can find whatever kind of genre and, type of storyline that you like in comics somewhere along the line. And I know there are some naysayers about this movie out there because of the horror taint. And all I say to them when they start to complain about it to me, as I look at them and I say, well, it's a comic book horror story. It's, and read, for your time period, read Midnight Suns.
Yeah, exactly.
It's that kind of a taint. The movie took me completely by surprise. It was not anything what I expected. I was expecting something completely different, and I was blown away by it, and I loved it. Now, yes, I'm a huge Sam Raimi fan.
Mm-hmm.
I love all his horror, his tape movies and things like that as well.
That's what all are, yes.
I've had people say to me, I didn't know I was going to go see Evil Dead 4, and I'm looking at him going, well, I think you need to go back and watch the Evil Dead movies because I did not get that this was Evil Dead 4.
Quit talking in the theater, sir. That's what I would say to him.
Wanda being the bad guy, I will have to say one of my friends actually called it right after WandaVision, and he said to me, he's like, I think Wanda might be the bad guy. And I was like, no. But I didn't really catch at the end of WandaVision until I watched it multiple times that she was reading the Darkhold at the end of that last Easter egg. I was thinking she was doing the Doctor Strange thing and studying the mystic arts. As soon as I realized it was the Darkhold, it's like, oh, okay. Well, it makes so much sense.
And I will say, Joey, I don't think has as much comic book knowledge per se. I know you're a comic book fan, but were you that big of a Doctor Strange fan? Did you go in with a lot of preconceived conceptions of what was going to be taking place in this movie, Joey?
No, I did pick and choose which Disney Plus shows that I would take time with, and WandaVision was one that grabbed me. I mean, just all those sitcom references were just amazing. I loved how they took that. I didn't stick with Hawkeye or, Falcon and Winter Soldier, but I did love WandaVision, so I was on board, and it's a great payoff for anyone that did stick with WandaVision.
Yes.
Yeah. We'll have to have words out there that you didn't stick with Hawkeye, but that's okay. So going into the movie, did the horror element for a comic book movie, because you've seen all the Marvel movies, right? You've seen all the other 27? Have you missed a couple here and there?
I've forgotten most of them, but I have seen most of them also. Yeah, there's probably, I can't think of one I haven't seen except Thor 2 or something. I've seen all the main ones.
So did the horror element bug you as a moviegoer, saying, oh, this isn't like the other Marvel movies? Because that's what everyone complains about, is the Marvel movies are cookie cutter. And then people are like, oh, why is this a horror? Did that bug you at all, the genre switch?
Don't say bugs in a derogatory term either. We got to use a
That's true.
different
I
word.
apologize.
Larry's
Larry,
going
I'm
to
sorry.
sue you for
Larry,
every time you
I
use it in a
apologize right
negative
now.
way. No, I'm a Sam Raimi fan before I'm a Marvel fan. So
Okay.
that's what I was in for. I didn't know any of the backstory either about the original director, Scott Derrickson, leaving and Sam Raimi coming on. And you're going to love this quote that I pulled up. He said, "So my job really was not to make something outrageous. It was really more about adapting as a filmmaker, a storyteller, to the Marvel sensibility." So Sam Raimi came on like it was just another gig. So that after the fact, I kind of saw like, yeah, maybe it wasn't Sam Raimi's vision, but the madness was there. The zombies, all that stuff that you'd want to see, you know, the point of view camera, you know, his little trademarks. I loved that stuff.
Yeah, I think it definitely had. It was, I mean, everyone I talked to after we saw the press screening said, oh my gosh, it had Sam Raimi's fingerprints all over it. That's one of the things I heard several people say. And it did, and it should. Just like I think, to me, the original Thor movie is very much a Kenneth Branagh film. I mean, that seems like his thing. Thor, and the third Thor, obviously, is very much a Taika Waititi film. So I don't have a problem with that. And just like the Guardians or a James Gunn film, I don't see why that would be a problem. The guy who directed the first Captain America directed The Rocketeer. Same guy, and you can see why. I think Kevin Feige is good about picking the right people for the gigs that they're assigned in the Marvel Universe. And so far, I haven't had a big problem with any of them. Larry, do you feel the same?
I feel the same, and going with the whole thing about Raimi and the directing style, that's the whole point. Certain directors become your favorite directors. You know, pull out one of the greats, you know, Alfred Hitchcock.
Oh, yeah.
You're going to go to a Hitchcock movie, you're going to expect certain elements that he always puts into his movies. It's the same with Raimi. You know, I would have been disappointed if I wouldn't have seen some of the things that I saw, especially with the horror taint.
You can't say taint on the radio.
Oh,
I'm just kidding. I'm totally kidding. I was really hoping that my one disappointment was I was really, really, really hoping that I know everyone kept saying Bruce Campbell's in the film, Bruce Campbell. I was hoping we're going to get Mephisto and Bruce Campbell was going to be Mephisto.
Oh,
but
God,
at this point, I'm convinced we're never getting Mephisto because that's what everyone kept saying during WandaVision. That's what everyone kept saying during No Way Home. Here's where Mephisto shows up. We're never getting Mephisto.
We don't know what powers Pizza Papa has. He's probably picked up something from Doctor Strange now.
That'd be a good point. We know he won't be Mysterio, which was Sam Raimi's original intent in the original Spider-Man trilogy. So we know we won't get that. Unless, of course, he is Mysterio in Tobey Maguire's universe. That's still a possibility. But
Sony has broken my brain. I don't know what to think. Does any of this matter? It's exciting.
It is.
No, as long as the movies are good and fun, that's one of the things people come at me all the time, you know, being the old long reader as I am, you know, are you upset about this? Are you upset about this change? Are you upset about that? And I'm just like, no, it's the movies. It's the cinematic universe. I'm loving it.
Yeah, I, as a comic book purist, I've had my nitpicky little issues with certain Marvel movies here and there. Not as much as I've had with the DC universe. And again, that saddens me because I'm more of a DC. You and I have had this conversation, Larry. I'm more of a DC Comics guy than I am a Marvel Comics guy. At least I used to be. But I think the Marvel Cinematic Universe and the way, like we just talked with David, Savage Avengers is brilliant. Hellions was a great book. Daredevil is great. They've got a lot of great, the Devil's Reign series. Marvel has been changing the game where DC's really kind of been letting me down lately with their storytelling.
Well, all I can say about for DC is try some more of the Joshua Williamson books.
Okay. I'll have to pick some more of those up next time I'm in.
He's
we should mention, too,
he's my new favorite writer.
This is a great time to mention. He just said next time you're in, pick him up. Larry owns a shop. You may have heard me talk about it. Bugs Comics and Games on Bryan Road. Just celebrated their 6-month anniversary. And, of course, you can become an Avenger. You join the Avengers Club, and you start getting discounts on your monthly books. You can get discounts on your back issues, your supplies, your games. And if people can get the Avengers Club online, they don't have to be in the St. Louis, St. Charles area. They can get it online and order the books with the Avengers Club, yes?
Oh, yeah.
Do you have many online clients? I mean, obviously you've got a lot of foot traffic.
We don't have any online out-of-town people yet, but the door is open.
Yeah, so if you're looking for someplace new to get your comics and you want to save some money on them, you can obviously go to bugscomicsandgames.com, and you can join the Avengers Club and do an online pull list as well. That's a great way to make sure you don't miss an issue. Like Savage Avengers #1, David just said sold out. There was another comic too that I missed. It sold out. Oh, I was talking to somebody that said they had trouble finding the recent Amazing Spider-Man #1 that John Romita is doing. Do you still have some of those at your store?
I got a lot of those still.
See?
It's Spider-Man, so of course I ordered.
I think it was my friend. I think it may have been my friend Chris. So Chris, if you're listening, Bugs Comics has those Amazing Spider-Man #1s that you can go grab. He's on Bryan Road in O'Fallon. So pretty much if you're coming from 70 or 40, it's right there. And obviously you can go on the website bugscomicsandgames.com to peruse his back issues. You can get the variant covers. I know that's got to be tricky when you're running a brick and mortar. You've got people coming in your store and be like, oh, that comic there that you want in the case? Yeah, sorry, some guy online just bought that. That's one of those situations that you might find yourself in as well. But it's always good. I always recommend shopping local. So if you're in the area, definitely stop by. But if you don't have a comic book store in your area, maybe the comic book store near you is closed down and you're listening to this right now, bugscomicsandgames.com, and you can get your comics from Larry. And no one knows more about comics, in my opinion, than Larry. Of all the people I know, he's got the greatest repository of knowledge, which is why we're always glad to have him on. We've got just about 30 seconds or so left, Larry. Anything else big coming up at the shop?
No, except for I do have some copies of Savage Avengers left. Not many, but I do have some. And like, if you've been listening to the show, if you haven't read the book, you should read the book. And there's a lot of new good stuff that's been coming out, so don't dismiss new comics. There's a lot of good stuff in there.
I agree. A lot of good stuff coming out, especially if you want to grab those Marvel comics. Larry Quiggins, as always, thanks very much for being on the show tonight.
Thanks for having me.
Anytime. There he goes. Make sure you stick around for Max on Movies is up next. He has Bonnie Wright, not Bonnie Raitt the singer, Bonnie Wright from Harry Potter. He's going to be talking about the future of the Fantastic Beasts franchise. So stick around for Max on Movies. We'll be back next week with Michael Rosenbaum, Smallville, The Flash, all that good stuff. Until then, my friends.
This is Geek to Me Radio. That's our show. This is Geek to Me Radio.
Thank you, Sumerian Age. Good night.
The Big 550 KTRS.